What is going on, everybody? I'm Sunburnt, and welcome back to Cologne. Today, we're going to be looking at interviewing Valentino's Born in Roma Extradose. Let's get into it. So I picked this one up about 2 weeks ago, and I've kind of waited a little bit to do the review on it. For the 1,000 subscriber giveaway, I tossed this one in as a potential bottle to give away to the winner. They went with a different one, so I decided to go ahead and crack this one open. And I figured we could go ahead and start wearing this one, checking this one out, and seeing what this one is going to be all about. So we're going to start off the way we always start off, and that is going to be showing off the Atomizer. And the Atomizer is very good. It's not overly pressurized, but it has a great center burst, and this thing will move a lot of juice very quickly. But what you're going to get when this fragrance gets in the air is a beautiful floral fragrance that's got a little bit of a spiciness and a little bit of a warmth to it. Nothing crazy as far as the spices go. They do lean a little bit more like of a green spicy to me than potentially something like a sharp spicy, like a cinnamon or something along those lines. But what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get a few sprays there drying down on the arm. And we're going to go ahead and touch on the notes real quick. Valentino continuing the trend of an extremely limited note breakdown. The top notes on this are going to just be spicy notes. The mid notes on this are going to be lavender, and the base notes on this are going to be woody notes. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And as far as the fragrance goes, pretty much exactly what you get. Valentino is very good about making a more linear fragrance, but with it being linear, still being incredibly good. And this one falls exactly in line with what Valentino likes to do, because for this being a little more of a linear fragrance, if we're being honest, even all the way through the dry down, this one feels incredibly complete. This one doesn't feel very redundant, and it just smells so good. So as far as some of the spicy notes goes on this, it feels a little more fresh. It doesn't feel like green necessarily, like it's not like an apple or like a kiwi or anything like that. I feel like this might have like some star anise in it. If it does have a cinnamon in it, it's going to be a very, very clean cinnamon. It's not going to be sweet. It's not going to be harsh. It's not going to be anything like that. And I feel like it has a little bit of maybe like a pepper vibe to it somewhere in there. But a lot of that spiciness just mixed with the lavender that you're going to get on the top of this does lead this to be incredibly fresh feeling. It doesn't have like an overwhelming floral background. Now, the lavender in this is going to feel just a little bit familiar to a lot of the lavenders they use, especially in the Born in Roma Intense and the original Born in Roma Eau de Toilette. To me, this feels more of like an extremely overpowered version of that Born in Roma Eau de Toilette, but I am completely fine with that because that original Born in Roma Eau de Toilette is absolutely amazing to me. So as far as the name Extradose goes, I feel like that's what you get. I feel like they kind of took that one and just cranked it up to a 12. And I'm okay with that. This thing sets on the skin exceptionally well. But we will get into the deeper dry down in just a minute. So now we're going to go over the price, performance, and the availability. So availability wise, every major retailer should have this. Every discounter should be getting this. Most probably won't have it as of now. As far as pricing on this goes, I think retail this runs around that 130 to 140 range. And on discounters, I would expect it to be somewhere in that 110 to 120-ish. Valentino is kind of notorious for being a little less budget friendly on discounters than some of the other brands. But for 20-25 bucks off, still definitely worth a look. And as far as performance goes, I was kind of surprised by this one. Given the profile, I kind of expected it just a little bit better than the Born in Roma Eau de Toilette. The longevity on this is very good. I got 8 or 9 hours out of this on the skin. The sillage is exceptionally good as well. I got that 2 to 3 foot sillage, and the projection for this being a parfum concentration was very good as well. It was definitely in that 2 foot range, and that is not spraying heavy on this at all. So now we can talk about the deeper parts of the dry down just a hair. So on this one, as it starts to dry down a little bit, some of the spicy notes do kind of fade to the back a little bit. That lavender holds on fairly well. But what I get out of this isn't so much of a wood note as it is a little bit of a vetiver. I get a vetiver oak moss kind of vibe out of this. If you told me wood was going to be in the base of this, I would be a little bit surprised. This vetiver that I'm picking up is very clean. It's very crisp. So this one definitely comes from that Valentino DNA. You can tell it's definitely in that wheelhouse. I've seen a bunch of comparisons comparing this one to the Valentino Intense. I don't really think that's going to be a fair comparison, or at least in my book, because even if you say like you can pull all the sweetness away from it and that's what you're left with, Valentino Intense has such a gourmand pure vanilla smell to it that I can't really imagine it without it. Because part of what makes Valentino Intense so good is the way that creamy vanilla comes across. I feel like the lavenders on the two are very similar. I feel like this wood note compared to that one's vetiver is also very similar, but that's kind of where the similarities end. I can't really say take all the sweetness away from a fragrance and this is what you're left with, because it really wouldn't be that fair of a comparison to me. And as I've said earlier, I do think this one is definitely a more extremely overpowered eau de toilette version of the original Born in Roma, which that fragrance is amazing. This fragrance is exceptionally good as well. As far as change goes, no change virtually at all from about that 30-minute mark. A lot of the woodiness, a lot of the vetiverness that you're going to get, it pretty much comes to the forefront very quickly. Even after about that 5 or 6 hour range, it doesn't really change much. Everything that I pull off the base of this is it has a little bit of a wood note, but it's definitely a background note. It's not anything that's going to be in the forefront. Most of what you're going to get out of this is going to be a very clean lavender. It's going to be a very nice vetiver. This fragrance, for being a parfum concentration, is going to be exceptionally light. This fragrance is not heavy on the senses. It's not heavy as far as how it comes across. This has a wonderful aromaticness to it, and it has a little bit of a warmth to it as well. So the more it dries down, the warmer the fragrance does kind of get. So in a lot of that spiciness that would make this fragrance warm doesn't really come across. To me, a lot of the warmth is very clean. It's kind of floral. It has just a really, really good background. This fragrance, for being a more limited fragrance, does feel exceptionally complete. This isn't going to smell harsh at all. This fragrance is going to be very rounded. And honestly, I can kind of see myself leaning to this more in the springtime than the fall time. Some of the freshness that I get a little bit off this, and not fresh as in like crisp, citrusy, or anything like that, but fresh as in you walk outside and you just get like a good breath of fresh air. That's kind of what this fragrance reminds me of a little bit. This reminds me of kind of in that period where flowers aren't in bloom, but they're starting to come out. For some reason, the first time I smelled this, I kind of fixated on that a little bit, and that's really where this leans for me. So if I had to give this fragrance a rating right now, I would give it about a 9.5 out of 10. There's really not anything wrong with the fragrance. For me, I just feel like the fragrance isn't redundant necessarily, but it smells so familiar that it's kind of hard to call this just like a masterpiece kind of fragrance. But for everything that you get out of this, by all means, this is a wonderful fragrance. The performance is good. I wish the price point would come down just a little. Valentino in the past was a little bit more budget friendly. Their prices are slowly starting to creep up as well. I know a lot of companies are, but I kind of was hoping that this one would stay down just a hair, because I imagine Valentino at some point is going to come out with an elixir, and I was just hoping that they would avoid that trend of upcharging by about 40 bucks. But unfortunately, if the elixir version of a Valentino ever does come out, it's probably going to fall in that. So let's hopefully it don't, but good possibility it will. But yeah, as far as calling this a safe blind buy, I very much so. I think this would be an incredibly safe blind buy. Now, unfortunately, if I had to pick between this one, the original Eau de Toilette, or the Intense, I'm still going to fall for the Intense. This one and the Eau de Toilette for me is a little bit of a tie because they do smell so similar. This one being a little bit more of a woody vetiver, the original being just a hair more fresh and clean, but they're similar enough to where I don't really know that you could justify owning a full bottle of both. But if you definitely want to try them, I would recommend getting a sample of this one first. Like I said, just they smell similar enough to where I don't know that there's a pure justification on owning both. If you wanted the original to be a little bit stronger with a little bit more of an oak vetiver kind of vibe to it, then by all means, this is going to be the one for you. But this spring, I'm probably definitely going to be reaching for this one and the Eau de Toilette, because that's one I do like to wear that one as well. So these two will probably be fighting a little bit to see which one I'm going to grab the most. But what I'm going to do is something that I've started kind of doing in some of the other videos. I'm going to be sending 2 samples of this fragrance out. If you want a sample of this, all you got to do is leave me a comment down in the comment section, and after a day or two, I'll go through and I'll pick 2 people out, and I'll get a sample that's coming your way. Obviously, if you subscribe to the channel, I would love that. That's what helps the channel grow. But if you're interested in getting a sample of this fragrance, just leave me a comment and I'll try to get one coming your way. That is going to get us wrapped up for today. I'll go ahead and get it on this bottle one more time. Just absolutely beautiful presentation. Still has the snap cap, so I don't recommend doing that, but if you needed to, you could. But that is going to get us wrapped up. As always, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for subscribing, for sticking around, staying tuned. Listen to me yap about how stuff smells. I truly appreciate it. And as always, we will see you next time.